Tor Viszla took his troops to the surface of Corta 6. It was time to set his trap for Jaster Mereel, Jango Fett, and the rest of the True Mandalorians. Sanctioned by the Jedi Master Dooku, Tor Viszla and his Death Watch planned to end the war now. But if this didn't succeed in wiping out the True Mandalorians, he had a backup plan. As he met with the Corta Defense Force, he informed them of how the invaders would attack. First, ground forces would come in to secure the palace. Then they would send in their highly skilled jetpack units, and following would be the fighter squadron to clear around the palace. But Tor Viszla ensured the Corta Defense Force that they would be ready. All units were to wait in the palace in hiding. In the meantime, Jaster Mereel, Jango Fett, and Tor Viszla began their descent. Today, on Star Wars Fanatic. The fact that this was going to be a simple extraction was reiterated to Jaster Mereel's forces. They had grown in number and had been going over the plans for this mission since they left Hoth. It was flawless, but it was exactly what Tor Viszla had expected. After all, he had met them on the battlefield before and saw their tactics work firsthand. But since they had not changed tactics, it made the True Mandalorians predictable. But Jaster and his men weren't expecting a foe that was experienced in their combat styles. If he had expected it, as Jango and Montross had warned him, he would have surely changed his tactics or avoided the temptation altogether. They still weren't ready for a head-on confrontation with Death Watch, or any other Mandalorian group for that matter. Hondo Ohnaka and his crew went to the dark side of the small moon as instructed. He addressed his band of cutthroats. "Our friend Jaster Mereel has promised we will have little to do on this, but we are here for support just in case something goes wrong." The Weequay pirates cheered in agreement. "Now, my boys, we wait." On the surface, Tor and the Corta Defense Force waited in the palace. All entrances had guns pointed at them, or ready to be pointed at them. There were no Mandalorians left visible from the outside, only the usual guards to give the impression all was well. He told everyone, "Remember, do not start firing until they are inside. We do not want them fleeing." All commanders nodded in confirmation. Jaster pulled Jango aside. "Your contact will meet you outside the north wall. Be careful and quick. We need to get their king out before the insurgents get to him. They have been having a hard time breaching the palace, but our informant says they could break through any moment." Jango looked through his helmet. "Yes, sir." Jaster put his hands on either side of Jango's helmet. "Son, I'll see you on the ground." Jaster was to meet up with an informant on the south side of the palace as Jango cleared the entrances from the front with his grunts. The gauntlet carriers dropped Jango Fett, his lieutenants Miles and Silas Scarata, and their grunts on the other side of the ridge, just out of sight of the palace. Stealth was the key and the first step of the plan. Gain access to the palace and clear the entrances. As they made their way to the palace, something was off. And the closer they got, the more apparent it was. There was no fighting to be seen. It didn't even look like a battle had taken place here any time recently. Jango broke the silent communication order. "Commander, something is off. I'm at the north wall and there is no contact, nor is there any sign of insurgency." Jaster answered, "Press the mission forward. Improvise." Jango turned to Miles and Silas. "You heard him. Improvise. But we are not going to march into that palace. We will check the perimeter first." Inside, Tor Viszla and his units wait. Among them is Ursa Wren. Luckily, her recent memories returning didn't show in her actions, nor in her demeanor. She hid it very well. She just needed that moment to break free and rejoin her brother. She thought of her oath and her creed. She is locked in to honor her Mandalore. But if Mandalore Viszla was the one who killed her parents, she is following the wrong Mandalore. She had convinced herself that Tor Viszla was her mother and father's murderer. Even if she couldn't remember his face, he carried that black-bladed dark saber, the one that killed her parents. Arla Fett wished she could involve her best friend Ursa Wren in her plan to leave, but Ursa was dedicated to the Death Watch cause. She couldn't risk anyone knowing her intentions. Ursa would become a liability. It pained her to think of Ursa as being her enemy one day, but her family was her priority. Her mind was swimming. What if Tor was right, though? What if Jango was the one misguided? All she knew was she had to find out. If he were the villain in this, there was no way she could kill him. Jango and his men cleared the perimeter of the palace. There was nothing there to fight off. He then gave the order to breach the north entrance. Satine Kryze was more than happy to oblige. In Mandalorian style, she tapped a button on her arm gauntlet and a rocket shot out, puncturing a hole in the entrance so large it was big enough for one person to enter at a time. She entered. It was clear. The other grunts followed, but Silas and Miles stayed outside with Jango to cover their backs. Then they saw the blast door slam shut inside. Inside it was a bloodbath. All were killed almost immediately by either Death Watch or the Corda Defense Force. Jango could hear the faint sounds of blasters, then silence. "Jaster, it's a trap. Get us out of here." There was no answer. The helmet comms had been jammed. Jango and his lieutenants were on their own. Jango looked up as he saw the transports release their payload of jetpack units. It felt like an hour that he had been standing there, but in reality it had only been about 3 minutes. With the jetpack troops launched, that means Jaster Mereel was already on the ground and making his way to the south side of the palace. The trio had to get around the palace unnoticed and warn Jaster. Inside, the captain of the Corda Defense Force looked at Tor Viszla with disappointment. "Is that it? You said they were great warriors." Tor held back his anger at the glorified guard. "No, that's not it. We seem to have missed a few. These are grunts, not officers." Ursa and Arla were at the south entrance. Ursa Wren, copy? Ursa replies. Ursa Wren here, Mandalore. Ursa, we have taken out most of their ground units, but there are more out there. Proceed through the tunnels. Copy that. Corda team, you stay here and kill anything that comes through that door. Arla, you come with me. Jango, Silas, and Miles reach the south wall and stay clear of the entrance. He drops his rangefinder and sees Jaster and his ground forces. Jango waves to them. Jaster stops. He realizes Jango is alone and out of place. Jango should have taken the north entrance. Jaster realized something had gone wrong. He and his men proceeded cautiously. Just then, the transports exploded above, which dropped Montross and his units. The shots came from the palace. This was surely a trap. Jaster approached Jango as they knelt down against the palace wall. Jaster, it's a trap. All my men are inside. I don't think they made it, explained Jango. Jaster's head dropped. How did this happen? Jango replied sternly. This isn't the time for that. We have to get out of here, and we have no comms. Our transports were just destroyed, and we are all trapped here. Jaster snapped out of his short-lived self-pity. We have to find a way to contact Montross and the Gauntlet fighters. Jango responded. If the fighters know the mission has failed, they would have switched to comms beta. But our helmets do not carry that frequency. All we can do is hope they know the objective has changed. We can also only hope Hondo doesn't run out on us. Jaster surveyed his immediate area. Whoever is in there setting this trap will be coming out to wipe the rest of us out. We have to be ready. The fighters had been waiting for their time just outside the planet's atmosphere. They saw the flashes, presumably the flares calling for their support, but the transports haven't returned yet. Skull Squadron leader Kuart Rao made the call. It had been long enough, and something had to be wrong. As he and his squadrons entered the atmosphere, they realized the flashes weren't flares. They were the explosions of the transports carrying the jetpack soldiers. Skull Squadron, switch to comms beta, Kuart continued. The mission has changed. Our primary objective is extracting our forces. Incoming fire! Take evasive action! Out of the 8 support fighters, 5 were gone in a flash. The remaining fighters of Skull Squadron rushed to the surface in hopes of reaching their targets at the palace. On the dark side of Corda 6's smaller moon, Hondo and his men heard Skull Squadron's cries. He monitored the chatter until there were only a couple voices left. His first instinct was to cut his losses and run, and that's just what his men were advising him. Hondo, we have to get out of here. Hondo looked at them all. At. You are not the leader of this outfit, I am. He continued. How many of you want Mandalorian bounty hunters looking for you? If any of these new friends of ours survive, they will come looking for us. It is most profitable if we help them escape, then cut ties with them after that. Even though he knew they could cloak their ships to extract what was left of the true Mandalorians, he had a bad feeling about this. Meanwhile, Montross saw his transports explode behind him. He was narrowly missed by a piece of flaming wreckage as it plummeted to the surface of Quartus 6. Montross cursed Jaster Mereel to himself. He and Jango warned him of this, and he ignored them. But this wasn't the time to rehash. It was time to get to the surface and regroup with whomever was left. He watched as his unit was picked off one by one as they all tried to reach the surface. The heat signatures of their jetpacks were making them easy targets, so Montross turned off his jetpack, with the hopes it would refire just before he would impact on the surface. His jetpack did just that. He ignited it just a few yards from impact, and it slowed his descent until he touched the ground softly. He looked around, using every bit of his heads-up display that was available. Nothing, no one, none of his men had survived. Montross fell to his knees. How could Jaster not have listened? He was doomed us all. Montross quickly regained his composure. He had to be the strong warrior now. Later, the strong leader. But first, he had to find anyone who may have survived. Surely, at least Jango would have made it. So, he began the hike to the palace. Ursa Wren and Arla Fett made it through the palace escape tunnels. They led to a field just outside the south side of the palace. The tall grass would give them shelter to watch the small group of Mandalorians huddled against the south wall. Arla was beginning to get anxious. How was she going to get away from Ursa? Then, Ursa whispered through her comm, "Mandalore Viszla, targets in sight, 10 to 15 in all." Just then, Ursa fell over unconscious. If there were any time that was the right time for Arla to slip away, it was now. She made sure Ursa was still breathing and that the stun worked before proceeding to the True Mandalorians. Jango heard the distinct sound of a stun weapon just across the field from their position. He motioned everyone to get down. As the tall grass rustled closer and closer to them, Jango made out a streak of grass moving. Had the enemy sent someone to finish them off for sure? They would have sent more than one person. Then, more and more streaks of rustling tall grass behind the initial trail. Jango pointed to the moving grass. "Fire," he whispered. And then, the remaining True Mandalorians let hell loose. One by one, the trails of grass ceased, immediately. Then, hell came back at them threefold. Pinned against the wall, the blasts were coming from the other three sides of the perimeter. They were surrounded. Montross was close to the palace, close enough he could see blaster shots going in all directions. Jaster got himself pinned down. He knew that if he didn't help, he would have no one to lead when this war was over. He inched his way forward, and as he got closer, he could see the blue colors on Mandalorian armor. It was Death Watch. Not that he had any doubts, but this confirmed his suspicions. He looked up and saw 3 fighters of Skull Squadron joining in the fight. Montross had the element of surprise and launched his jetpack rocket at the group covering the east side of the palace. He had to act quickly. The fighters began strafing the ground in front of the north attackers. Chaos was surrounding the palace. Anti-aircraft was proving ineffective for the Death Watch. There was a reason these 3 fighters made it through. Tor Viszla made the call from the north field. "Air support, now." Immediately, a squadron appeared on the horizon, and the 3 Skull Squadron gauntlets dispersed. Montross took this opportunity to get Jango and Jaster out of there. He had killed all attackers on the east side, making a big enough hole for them to escape. Jango noticed the explosion and the fact that there was no gunfire coming from the east side. "There, that's our escape." Then Miles stopped, spun around, and pointed his pistol at a single Death Watch female. His blast deflected off the forehead of her helmet. She did nothing in return. "Which of you is Jango?" "Jango Fett." Miles responded, "I'll take your message to him, Death Watch." Arla removed her helmet. "No, I have to give it to him." Miles slammed the helmet back on the girl and grabbed her by the arm to pull her along with them. "We will clear this up if we make it out of here alive. Then you can give Jango your message from behind a cell." Just then they looked up. All 3 Skull Squadron fighters were gone. They were all alone now, and Tor Viszla was hot on their trail. The only thing they could do was hide and hope the pirates would come. Arla spoke up. "I know where we can go." Silas answered, "Silence, Death Watch." Jango looked the girl over and spoke one word, "Lead." Jaster felt a familiarity in the situation. It reminded him of the day he found Jango on Concord Dawn, on the run, and Tor Viszla hot on his trail. Maybe Montross was right. Maybe Jaster Mereel, the true Mandalore, had lost his edge. He was making the same mistakes he made when he was younger. His self-pity was beginning to get the out again. He turned to his officers and gave them a good look. These men had fought for him and their beliefs with unwavering valor. Time and time again, they had proven themselves, even Montross Viszla. Jaster felt that if anyone had been the betrayer, it was Jaster himself. He should have listened to his men. He slowed his pace until his men were all ahead of him. No one noticed, due to being focused on the Death Watch girl in the lead and trying to stay out of sight. His men were further and further ahead of him until he was sure they didn't notice. He turned and went the opposite direction. His intention was to prove he was still a great Mandalore. He was going to kill Tor Viszla and end this civil war. He will either succeed or die trying. He said out loud, victory or death. Jango did a quick look to survey the area and take account of their forces. All 15 who had survived were accounted for, as well as their new prisoner, all except Jaster Mereel. Jango felt his heart race. Remembering his training, he calmed himself. He turned to his crew. Miles, Silas, with me. Montross, do your best to contact Hondo for extraction. He continued by telling him to get the prisoner secured. Montross responded, yes, Jango. Arla had her suspicions as the team was using code names like Thorn and Bolt the whole time. Apparently, Jango was codenamed Ghost. Her ears perked up, but this wasn't the time to be sentimental. She would have to wait for the extraction to reveal herself to her brother. But at least she knew who he was. She was impressed. Her younger brother had seemed to become quite a strong leader. Jango and his lieutenants backtracked. This is where Jango's hunting and tracking days as a child will pay off. It didn't take long to pick up on Jaster's trail. By the foot impressions, Jango could tell Jaster was moving fast. Jango and his team would have to move faster. They had acquired jetpacks from some of Montross's fallen team along the way. This would make catching Jaster easier, but would leave them vulnerable to blaster fire, or whatever else this planet could throw at them. It wasn't long at all until they got just that. Rockets and blaster bolts hurled towards them. It took everything they had to dodge the barrage while staying on Jaster's trail. Then Jango spotted him. He motioned to his team, and they all flew as close to the ground as they could, feeling the grass hitting their Beskar, but staying focused. They reached a tired Jaster Mereel. His age was getting the best of him in this battle. Jaster yelled at them to return. He told Jango that if he died, as his heir, the cause would be lost. Suddenly, there he was. He seemed to have just appeared out of nowhere from the tall grass. Tor Viszla, accompanied by 4 men. Tor let out a laugh. Ha ha ha. Well, Jaster Mereel and Jango Fett, I presume. This ends here. Immediately following, both sides began firing, dropping to the ground to get cover in the grass. Jango, Silas, and Miles took to the sky to get the upper hand. 2 of Tor's men lay lifeless. Tor and the other were better than the average foot soldier, though. Tor barely aimed and Miles fell to the ground. Silas rushed down to check on him, but he was lifeless. Jango fired a direct shot to Tor's counterpart, and he fell. As he did, Tor rushed Jaster with the darksaber. Jaster fought him off for a moment, but Tor was stronger and faster. His black energy blade found Jaster's abdomen, slicing him open and cauterizing the wound at the same time. Jango and Silas rushed Tor. 2 shots hit Tor Viszla. He dropped. Jango and Silas moved quickly to retrieve Jaster, but just then, Tor Viszla rose and landed a shot to Jango's neck. Silas panicked and fled. On his way back, he found Montross heading to the scene. Jaster, Jango, and Miles are dead. We have to get out of here. Montross dropped his head and quickly regained his composure. On the outside, he appeared to be mourning, but on the inside, he was relieved. He could now turn this cause into what he wanted. Silas and Montross took time to get back to the extraction point. It was clear they were being hunted. As they arrived, Hondo and his Weequay pirates were arriving for the evacuation. Most of the troops were wounded. It took a moment to get everyone boarded on the pirate's saucer-shaped craft. When Arla overheard mention of Jango's fall, she began to weep silently. Montross was last on board, and just as he did, Jango shouted, "Wait!" Silas rushed to his aid. Jango was dragging Jaster's lifeless body. More true Mandalorians hurried to assist them in getting the last survivors on board. As soon as everyone was on the platform, the ship cloaked and departed Quartus 6. All the while, Dooku and his apprentice had been monitoring the battle from the larger moon. It seems Tor Viszla was correct. The true Mandalorians are a threat to the Republic, remarked Dooku. We will report this to the Jedi Council. I'm sure the Republic will want this information as well. Okay, so that concludes this episode of The Road to Book of Boba Fett. I'm really enjoying making these. Even though they don't get a ton of views, it's just been really fun for me to make them. I really hope you're enjoying watching it as much as I'm enjoying making them. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. I love interacting with you guys. And if you're new to the channel or just haven't taken the creed yet, go on and hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications to stay up to date on my Star Wars content, discussions, fan fictions, and theories. Hit the like button to show your love for the hard work I put into each video, and share the video with some friends. Let's see how high we can take this channel together. Don't forget to join me every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in the United States for a live stream where we talk about Star Wars and just cut up together. Thank you for watching, and remember, this is the way, the only way.